and welcome to another evening of frank conversation here on Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. I'm Maokpe Ogun Yusuf. I know many Nigerians are now more vigilant at the filling stations, considering the unpleasant taste of another fuel price increase. But Hard Copy tonight is looking at something closely related, the price of food and how to keep it down. On Monday this week, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics released its quarterly consumer price index. And again, headline inflation notched up 4.19% when compared with the same period last year. Of this, food inflation was at 25.25% from 20.6% recorded about the same period last year. It's now over a week since the president announced a state of emergency on food security. The president's spokesman, Mr. Dele Alake, had announced a slew of measures to tame food inflation and make it readily available to Nigerians. The measures included the following: the release of grains and fertilizers to households, an urgent synergy between the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Water Resources to ensure adequate irrigation of farmlands and to guarantee that food is produced all year round. Support for a national commodity board that will review and continuously assess food prices, as well as maintain a strategic food reserve that will be used as a price stabilization mechanism for critical grains and other food items. You have a number of other items here that matters pertaining to food and water availability and affordability as essential livelihood items be included within the purview of the National Security Council, the establishment of ranches in collaboration with state governments, and the federal government will pay for the land. Well, on Hard Copy this week, we speak with a farmer, Mr. Rotimi Williams, who is the founder of Keresuk Rice Farm. It's the second largest rice farm in the country, on how effective he thinks these measures will be. Well, Mr. Rotimi Williams, welcome to Hard Copy.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'll ask you this first. As a fellow Nigerian, what adjustments have you had to make looking at the price we saw at the filling stations this week?
I think the luck I have is both cars are four-cylinder cars. So we started living that life a little earlier. So I don't have those issues. But again, I mean...
They're what?
My cars.
Yeah.
They're four-cylinder.
Meaning?
Small engines.
Oh, small engines.
Very small engines. So
okay.
we started practicing early.
Okay.
For this. But I mean, when you look at the people around me, the staff I have...
But they're still using petrol?
Yeah. The staff I have, my driver, and I look at how hard it hits them. You know, I don't see how they're going to cope. And, you know, whenever prices go up,
indeed,
the last part to go up is also always labor cost. Food prices will go up, transportation will go up, salaries never go up in line with that. So it's always very hard for them to cope. So I don't really know how, you know, we're going to get out of this situation. This is I think what has happened now is where Nigeria really should have been for the last 5 years. I think we've just been fooling ourselves. I think this is where we are, and we need to realize that this is a country that is still very much underdeveloped in some sense, and we need to start working towards development.
Okay, well, food is one area where you're currently playing in the agricultural sector. You own one of the biggest rice farms, and food is one of the places where the federal government intends to intervene. It has declared a national emergency on food. From the measures, they were quite very lengthy, some of the measures which the federal government intends to implement. Do you think that they're on track?
I think, based looking at the list, I think, well, for a government that just come into power, it's a good start. But before this kind of document comes out, we need to know who the Minister of Agriculture is. He needs to drive this document. We need to know the House Committee on Agriculture, for example. Who's the Minister for Water Resources? What's the collaboration? Do you see? So those are the things that needs to be done. And then in order of priority, from priority 1 to priority 12, which one comes first on that list also needs to be addressed so that we know what exactly it is we're dealing with. Today in Nigeria, I mean, part of the reasons why most people cannot go to their farm is not that they don't have access to seeds or they don't have fertilizer. It is that they will probably get killed or kidnapped on the farm. So security is number one on that list. After that, you can begin to talk about everything else. But if we don't deal with the security in the rural area, which produces at least 95 to 98% of the food produced in Nigeria is produced in the rural area. If we agree that that is correct, then any issue in the rural area affects food supply. So we need to deal with that issue.
So as one who owns a farm, for 5,000 hectares, at least the rice farming, I don't know if you're into other products apart from rice, but how has that affected your farm produce? I mean, have you been able to, and those who work on your farms, how bad is the security situation for where you currently own your farm?
I've now gone to the farm in 2 years. I refused to go to the farm. When the last time I farmed was in Plateau, and it was after harvest I realized I was told that there were 5 kidnap attempts, and I had serious anxiety issues. There was no way I was going to go back to the farm. I have another company, a tech company, that does security work. So we basically collect early warning system, panic alert, early warning system for rural communities, agri communities. And I know the number of people that have been killed on the farm. I know the number of people that have abandoned their 10 hectare, 15 hectare farms to a half a plot or half a hectare farm next to their homes. So there's no way this doesn't translate to what we also see in the market, which is also what has added or contributed to this rise in the price of food. So, I mean, we need to count the cost of what security actually means before we begin to look at other policies to boost production.
You're currently not operating any of your farms?
No, I'm not. Before I can produce on a large scale, I need to be on the farm, I need to plan the operation. It's a large operation. I've not been able to do that. And it's not just me. There are many other farmers that I know that went into agriculture around about the time I went, who have also abandoned their farms. If you look at all the production areas today, they all have one form of insecurity issue or the other. If you look at Plateau, if you look at Nasarawa is relatively safe, but they still have a lot of kidnapping issues. But it borders Benue, Bank of River Benue, and Taraba, which are also hotspots. So if you look at all these agri-producing areas, they all have flashes of violence. We need to deal with those before we can address food production in those areas.
Well, I know that the federal government also, I mean, the president's spokesman also, addressed that, talking about that all matters pertaining to food and water availability and affordability must be included within the purview of the National Security Council. He also talked about, the conflict between farmers and herders. And one of the things that they're looking to do is to buy land. The federal government wishes to buy land from state government so that they can establish ranches. Do you think that that could also help, ameliorate the conflict that we've seen exacerbate between farmers and herders in places like Plateau, in Benue, and, these other strategic places that, farmers tend to, grow a lot of crops?
Okay, so I think what we need to point out first here is distinguish between communal clashes and the farmer-herder issues. And it's part of the reasons, the crucial reasons why the previous government found it difficult to address this conflict. Because they have that blanket label on anything that happens in the community as farmer-herder crisis, or just communal clashes. So you need to go community by community to actually find out what exactly sparked that violence. If you look at the recent killings in Mango, for example, you're going to just say it's farmer-herder issue. But there's some form of political connotation to it. It has also the ethnic aspect to it, do you understand? And then the economic aspect, which is the farmer-herder. So it's 3-layer. So if you're only dealing with one, the rest of the issues still remain there. Do you understand? And if you look at the other issues in Plateau, the other side of Plateau, which is Bassa, a similar problem again. Do you see? So just blanket labeling as farmer-herder crisis will not solve the problem. You need to do a proper analysis, community by community. Now, to address that question about if they buy land from who is another issue. Who's going to sell you that land? Will they agree? What has been the history between the farmers and the herders in those areas where you want to buy land? Where it's conducive to also rear those animals? That's another issue, but it's a good step. I think it's a first step. It's a good step. And, I also, and I must say this, I also kind of feel that we haven't done enough for the herders. If they've given Nigeria, they produce about 95% of the beef consumed in Nigeria, and in the last 20 years, there's been no policy on breed improvement, welfare, education of these people, then what do you expect? If you look at Maitama here, grazing reserve, was a grazing reserve. If you look at the airport, for example, why are the cattle around the airport? I believe it was also a former grazing reserve. what was the alternative plan for these people when we took over their lands? So we basically developed and expect them to develop around us. That's not going to happen, especially if we need to educate them.
Well, when I heard that, I'm going to be very honest, when I heard that on the news, even before I read, the statement of the president's spokesman, just hearing that the federal government was going to buy land, I was asking myself, this possibly could be a solution, because I do recall that one of the problems that the herders had was how they couldn't afford to buy. For the states that have set up laws, saying that we're not saying you shouldn't come to our state to, graze your cattle. We're saying get ranches and, you have to buy land. And, for a number of the herders was that they couldn't afford to buy the land. So if the federal government is saying that, we're going to buy land on behalf of, and we're going to establish ranches in partnership with the state government on land which we will pay for, I was thinking that perhaps at least 50% of that problem might be solved. You don't think so? I
think it will address quite a large percentage of that issue. But again, you also have to look at the nature of the people, right? They're a semi-nomadic tribe. They move. So at certain parts or certain times of the year, they have to migrate. Whether it's rainy season or dry season, move back and forth. That has to be taken into consideration.
But what if, food and water is provided all year round for the cattle? But
when it's rainy season in certain areas, the cattle don't do very well.
Yeah, we've heard of fly, but at the same time, we've heard that, cattle now have the fly resistant breed of cattle, and we don't know how widespread that is. But that's what we've heard. That's one of the reasons why there's also conflicts, in the sense that people who used to go back before during the rainy season now don't go back. They don't want to go back, and as such, there's more conflict between farmers and herders in the places where ordinarily they ought not to be. I don't know how that is going to work out, but I see here the president's spokesperson saying that they will engage a security architecture to protect the farms and the farmers so that farmers can return to the farmlands without fear of attacks. These are assurances that have been provided. Have you heard or seen anything in that direction since this statement was made by the president's spokesperson?
Yes, I would say so, because I'm also in touch with the Nigerian Army, and I know they've been working hard on resolving some of these issues. And the reason I say Nigerian Army, don't forget that most of the rural area is ungoverned. There are parts I go in Nigeria where there's no police. It's just the people, right? So to bring security to that place that is largely ungoverned, the kind of insurgents you have, I'm not going to call them headers. These are not header issues, no. Because of the weapons they use, the sophistication of the weapons they use. The average policeman, which is AK-47, cannot face those people. It has to be a military solution to that. So I think that they are working, but a bit more attention needs to be paid to these farmlands, the rural areas, and relationship between the rural areas and the security agencies. There's been tension over the years. And if you look at most places, the issues of, we call the police, they do not come. How do we build those bridges? So those are things that also need to be looked at. But it's a welcome development. Again, I know it's sort of an amplified version of the agro rangers, only that now you're using the proper security forces to deal with the issue. Now, this is what they call, when you say you declare a state of emergency on food, this is what I expect because of the issues that we're facing.
So you think that this is comprehensive enough?
I don't think it's comprehensive enough. I think as a summary, it's a good start, but it needs to be fleshed out. We need to look at it and define it a bit better. Look at it, for example, I know there's a part there where it talks about distribution of food to homes. What is the logistic plan on that? Do you understand? Who pays the cost? Who bears the cost? Where's the food coming from? How does this distribution to homes affect the prices in the market? Because the people in the market also have businesses to run. I remember when they released Lake Rice. That was the first time I processed rice. I couldn't sell the rice I processed because Lake Rice in Lagos was selling at 12,000 per bag. But people that went to buy it were getting 25 kg bags. But the people in the market didn't know that. So I couldn't sell my rice to them at my own high price. So I lost that season. So you need to count the cost of what those sort of policies mean to the market itself.
Well, I'm looking at, some of the things that we've seen happen in recent times. The government obviously very concerned about the security around, farmland and in places Well, in some other states, it's a statewide problem. I'll give you an instance in Zamfara State now, where a mineral resource, gold, is now involved, and you now have bandits all over the place that have affected the livelihoods of farmers. We saw former governor of the state, Ahmed Yerima, visiting the president and asking for amnesty for the bandits. And we've also seen, looks like federal government could be looking in that direction, looking to have like a carrot and stick approach. One is wondering how that is going to work, considering also that, in the confirmation of the service chiefs in recent times, they have been talking quite tough on what it is that they intend to do about banditry. Looking at the mix of approaches, even though this is not really within the purview, but at the end of the day, it affects whether or not farmers will be able to go back, to their farms. So are you, do you have any reservations with how the federal government seems to be approaching this issue of, resolving the crisis, especially in parts of the Northwest and maybe other parts of the country where bandits are taking over?
I believe that at the point where we've reached now, we're not talking about conflict that just, it's herders that are carrying cutlass and farmers that are carrying knives. No. We're talking about people carrying GPMGs and sacking entire villages. There's no dialogue in that instance. People have been killed. When people are killed, it's hard to dialogue. And especially when that killing happens over and over and over again with little or no repercussion. Do you understand? It's hard to dialogue. So I think the approach of the army here, of the military rather, is very, very appropriate. Send out a message and let them know that, look, we don't want to dialogue. There's no amnesty here. If you want to dialogue, put your arms down and come and tell us what you want. But don't carry guns, kill people, and expect us to come and dialogue with you. The room for amnesty in this instance is wrong.
Some people say, how does this concern farmers? What farmers are concerned about is the safety of the farms and, whether government gives them carrots, whether government, shoots them away. What they want is safety at the end of the day. They just want to be
safe. It's daunting when you're on the farm. I don't know if you've been on the field before where you're looking around you and you can just see thousands of hectares with nothing. And the thought that comes to your head is somebody raising his head from the bush, pointing a gun at you and say, follow me. It's a daunting, very, very depressing thought. But this is what most farmers go through. Have you ever imagined what a farmer whose village and whose family was killed on the farm thinks of when he goes back to the farm? Who gives any form of psychological help? There's nothing. These people go back. I had to seek help because of what I went through. But these people, I look at them, they go back because of circumstance. And it's very, very unfortunate that this has to happen.
So how do you think that now that government is thinking of distributing fertilizers, distributing food, I mean, we don't even know whether they're going to be giving this food to farmers as well. How do you think that they can go about it in a way that is effective and in a way that, actually spurs the farmers to, go back, encourages them to go back to the farm?
Okay, so here's the thing. I need to be clear on what exactly. You see, it was one or two sentences there, rather they put out, and it's not very, very well spelled out. If I interpret it the way I read it, do you understand? Then I also struggle to see how it will work in terms of food distribution to household and farmers. Giving them cash, which is transferred, is bad enough. Food, what's the logistics? Where's the food coming from? Which reserve is it coming from? Who's paying for this food? Who's paying for this fertilizer? Where did the fertilizer come from? Is this money going to come from the palliative money? What exactly is the plan? Let Nigerians know and decide if this is the right approach. And by the way, how much food are you going to give to the household? How long will it last? Let's be honest. If you give them a bag of rice, maybe 10 kg, you can't give them 50 kg, 10 kg bag of rice, how long will it last? Does that really solve the problem? I think that if you're going to address the issue of farmers, what is the biggest issue the farmer faces today? Number one is security. Number two issue of the farmer is funding. But it doesn't need your money. The farmer just wants to have what he requires. Tell the tractor and harvester, tractor to come, do my land preparation for me. Give me seeds and fertilizer. Let me grow. But let me pay you when I harvest for everything. That way I can use all the land available to me. Run that approach. It makes more sense than doling out money. Because even when I tried it, when I gave the farmers around me fertilizer to enhance their own crops, they went to the open market to sell it, and that was cash for them for the day. But I can't blame them.
Sell it to who? Who exactly?
To people in the market.
So who needs
to other farmers? So if you give them a bag, they sell it mudu by mudu. you understand, to other farmers that you didn't give. And those ones will buy it, and that's cash in their pocket, and they're gone. And then they wonder why their crop did not come out well. But again, it's farmer education. A lot still has to happen.
Well, I do know that the federal government still sees a role for the CBN. According to them, they say the Central Bank of Nigeria will continue to play a major role of funding the agricultural value chain, activation of land banks. There's currently 500,000 hectares of already mapped land that will be used to increase availability of arable land for farming, which will immediately impact food output. How possible is this?
It's the same story we heard before. Now, the issue with the central bank, right? And like we discussed earlier, I mean, it doesn't really matter who's disbursing this money, as long as the intention is good and the method of disbursement is carried out as planned. With the anchor borrower, the intention was good, but the manner in which it was disbursed, right, was questionable. If that has been addressed, then by all means, we don't care where money is coming from, but put it to the right people. How does this money get to the farmer that needs the money? Don't give it to me, for example, to go and give to farmers. If you want to give it to me to go and farm. But don't say you are giving it to me to go and give to 2,000 farmers. And I'll first pocket the money for 1,500 farmers and give only 500 to do the work to show that I've done the work. Do you understand? It's not going to work. So have they been able to address those gaps? If they have, then by all means.
Do you think we have a credible database right now of farmers across the country?
No, we don't. No, we don't.
We don't know how many farmers, not even at the state level, because sometimes, you know, when states talk about restructuring, they always assume that, you know, it only concerns the big things like oil and their mineral resources. They don't think about agriculture, which is one of the places where they already have purview. How involved are state governments, for instance, in ensuring that, you know, the agricultural ministries within their states are active and that they know, say, maybe the number of farmers in their states?
Honestly, when I look across all the states, I still struggle to pick out any that has taken agriculture seriously, number one, that has structured its agricultural space in the right manner, has broken down, okay, this farmer in this area, this farmer in this area. It's only when it comes to politics, you see those numbers. Actually, you see it 2 times. When it comes that they want to borrow money from central bank, that's when you hear that they want to develop 2 million hectares with 10 million farmers. Do you understand? But do we see the produce? And it's in those very numbers that skew the policies that landed us where we are today and will land us in trouble in the next 5 to 10 years. If a state governor will come and say he produces 10 million tons, then why is Nigeria importing rice? What's our consumption? What you're basically telling me is that all we need to do is mill the rice, when in fact, the mills in those states are also struggling to look for paddy. So what you're telling me is that from 10 million tons that you produce, right, if you divide that by 8, because it's 4 tons per season, that's wet season, dry season, that's 8, you get 1,250,000 hectares under cultivation. That state doesn't have that under cultivation. It doesn't have the resources to be able to drive that under cultivation. So why are you coming up with fictitious numbers? And it's those numbers that you put in your policy to say Nigeria produces this. And based on that number is what the CBN and the finance and Agric will use to develop their policies. And then realize that, hang on, now we have 1 million meals, but there's no rice. So what happened here? The truth is that the first info you got about what was being produced is a lie.
What will it take for you to go back to your farm?
Security. The farm is where my life is. In fact, I still went shopping last week. The funniest stuff, I went shopping last week. I bought this cabana and these lounging chairs that I'm going to use on my farm. I don't know when I'm going to go back, but I'm going to go back. Because that's when I come alive. That's when I feel connected with the people. I see the real issues that people go through, how simple it is to actually affect people's lives positively, and how much we've messed up, and what the opportunity agriculture gives to develop these areas, area by area.
How many more young people like yourself do you think are interested in farming?
I think early days, 2013, 2014, 2015, there are a lot of people that are engaged. I mean, when they call me to come and speak at conferences, you literally look up and you see a lot of young people. Now, because of the security issues, the access to funding became very difficult, even though they said they give out these monies, but the young people did not get them. They should break down the demography of people that got the funds and tell me if you see anybody under the age of 30 that got that money, or under the age of 35 that got that money. Let's break it down. And they begin to understand why people are not getting engaged in agriculture. Now, because of this security issue, lack of funding, everybody's kind of just figuring other things to do. But it's tough. And if we don't get people on the farm, we will not be able to develop the communities. We can't, subsistence farming can always take us so far. For real knowledge transfer, for development of the rural area, you need commercial farmers to operate. We are the ones that can access the funding and push into those communities. My driver who drives me today is my field manager on the farm. Do you understand? That's how bad the situation is.
Well, Rotimi Williams, we hope that sometime you'll be able to go back to the farm very soon. And we hope that food prices will come down as a result of this. But in the meantime, we thank you for coming on Hard Copy.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's the program tonight, but we'd love to hear from you. Please use the handles showing on your screen to send us a message. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Good night.